Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel and today let's analyze the two Airbus A300s that were previewed on the FS Expo. On one hand side we have the Inibuilds A300-600, which had been announced a little bit earlier already last year, and then we have the JustFlight A300 B4-200. So two different versions of the very same airplane that we see developed over here, however with two very different target audiences. So this is going to be an exciting one, so stay tuned for this. We're going to start this with the Inibuilds A300 announcement, which is the A300-600. We got that posted last Friday and showcased in the FS Expo. Now, we got some very exciting shots from the outside over here, and I'm going to show you some of the insights based on their video preview in a few moments. We do see the typical A300 Inibuilds quality. Just remember the A310, which actually is very similar in terms of avionics to the A300-600, and my apologies for the developers who probably want to hang me for this comment. However, going on through this, we can see lots of details over here, especially on the different versions of cargo that can be loaded, and I can just assume that all the cargo we see over here in the screenshots will actually be loadable and visible inside the 3D model from the cockpit. So, on top of that, let's quickly go down a little bit to the feature list of the Inibuilds A300, and then we look at a couple of the cockpit shots from the preview video. So they've got a comprehensive system simulation alongside an authentic flight model in line with all Inibuild airliner products. The A300 for Master Flight Simulator will feature an incredibly realistic flight model meticulously designed to replicate the handling performance and behavior of the real-life aircraft. It features a full ACAS and CPDLC simulation, including SimBrief, with the option for classic and modern pedestal options, similar to the X-Plane version, Navigraph chart compatibility in a feature-rich EFB, numerous realistic and fictional liveries, a custom W-wide sound set, and a fully modeled freighter on the release version, and a passenger version post-release of the A300-600 airliner. The passenger version will include a fully modeled cabin. So that's the features we're expecting of the A300-600 from Inibuilds, and we can go to their trailer on YouTube to have a look into some of the cockpit shots, which I'm just going to run in the background over there while I talk about it for a bit. So what we see in there is we have the modern version of the A300, which is the version that you see flying with operators like FedEx or DHL at the moment in real life. And that's the version that includes the glass cockpit, flight management computer, and so on. Basically, the avionics of the A300-600 are pretty similar to the Airbus A310, which indeed is a version derived out of the A300-600 for those airlines desiring less payload capability and therefore some fuel savings. But the A300-600 basically is the good old A300 designed into a glass cockpit aircraft for two pilots. Now, that is pretty much what Inibuilds are developing here. We expect it to be similar to the A310 in terms of system capabilities, which was very good, so that is a very good sign over there, and it is very good to see that modeled into the A300-600, which is the version of the aircraft flying these days. So, funny by the way that they show this in a hangar in JFK with the American flag on it, while it is indeed a European aircraft and while the Americans absolutely hated that airplane, since it took away a fair share of their marketplace. Now, let's have a look into the competition, which is going to be JustFlight, who have announced a study-level airliner A300 B4-200. Now, the B4-200 actually is the one of the first versions of the A300, which first flew in 1972 and was the first airplane developed by Airbus. Now, if we look into what JustFlight promises, they promise in their video preview every single system fully modeled, and all three positions. Keep in mind the B4-200 is one that still has a flight engineer's position, and all of that is going to be fully modeled, including all systems in the JustFlight version. Now, if we go into the preview video and look a little bit around over there, we are going to find a lot of exciting announcements that they talk about the actual features of the aircraft. And it is for the very first time in Microsoft Flight Simulator actually going to feature an INS simulation. There will be 3 different navigation systems included with the product, which is going to be VOR to VOR navigation, a fully functional CVAR INS unit, which is the first in MSFS, and which is how most of the aircraft were navigated back in the 1970s, but then they also offer an RNAV-capable version via a UNS-1 flight management system. Now, the UNS-1 is basically what they're developing for the BAE 146 as well, so I guess they are going to port that version into the A300 over there. However, that's just a personal guess. Now, JustFlight did develop an A300 back in the day for P3D, and in the video they talk about it and say that yes, the model is based on the previous version, but it has been extensively remodeled and retextured to the best possible in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now let's go to the preview video, and I've skipped this one forward a little bit to where they go to show off some parts of the cockpit. So let's have a look into those and see what we can derive out of those images. Without any doubt, there is a very high level of system accuracy, or rather of modeling accuracy in this, as you can easily see from these pictures. Now obviously, the moment I'm recording something and trying to showcase it, the YouTube video stops altogether, so let's just reload this and go forward a bit to, well, this. So, this is what we can see of the A300 over here. Very high texturing level, and indeed some very good reflections there as well, but do have a look through that video yourself so that you can see it in the highest possible quality. I'm going to link it in the video description below for sure. Now, going through this, we can notice that we mostly see the very same part of the cockpit, in that we have the pedestal and the main panel of the aircraft, and actually we do see some renders a little bit later on, which show us the reason why we only see those. And those renders tell us that the cockpit is still very much work in progress, and that we are certainly in an earlier development stage at this point, with a lot of planned features announced, but they don't seem to be that far through the development that they could actually show the airplane in action in the simulator. However, for the very first versions and screenshots that we see over here, we can indeed derive that they've done an awesome job in the modeling of the cockpit. Now, what's going to be the differences then between the Inibuilds and the JustFlight? Well, mostly the JustFlight represents the early version of the airplane, as you can see in the screenshots right now, in that we have the first version of the A300, the B4200, and that one features a flight engineer station and features an analog cockpit, however with the option of an UNS-1 RNAV FMC retrofit, making our navigation a little bit easier. Now this is the rendering that I talked about. They got the main panel and they got the pedestal finished over there. The rest of it is not textured yet. However, it is safe to assume that based on earlier JustFlight products and based on what we've seen in this video already, we are going to see a lot of detail, just like we see in the screens that you have seen earlier. Now, the big question obviously is going to be which of the two aircraft is going to be for you. And that kind of depends on what you like in your aircraft. Before we go into the comparison, let me just re-emphasize that JustFlight have said that this is going to include an electronic flight bag with a SimBrief and Navigraph integration, and it's going to feature 2 engine models, the GE CF6 and the Pratt & Whitney JTD9 engines, so you have 2 different engine options available for this aircraft. Now, let's compare JustFlight and Inibuilds. We know what level of details of the systems to expect from Inibuilds, in that we can have a look at the A310, and that we have reasonable grounds to assume that the A300-600 is going to be on a similar system level. Obviously the 600 is a more modern version that is equipped for modern days navigation, while the version modeled by JustFlight is going to be an earlier version of the airplane. Now, comparing systems, at least comparing what JustFlight are promising for the aircraft, in that they say every single system is going to be fully simulated. So we are expecting the JustFlight to become a study-level airplane in full. while on the other hand side we're expecting the Inibuilds to become similar to the A310, which was fun to fly but not study level. Now, which of the two aircraft should you get then? Well, first of all, personally I'm super excited for a study level simulation of an old school glass cockpit airliner. And that is actually a first in the complete simulator, and indeed a first in complete simulation history as far as I can see, and that we're getting a steam gauge study level airplane. So I'm personally super excited for the JustFlight, because it is just going to be an awesome piece to not only fly, but also to learn about how aviation looked like 50 years ago. Keep in mind this is a 50-year-old airplane by now. On the other hand side, the Inibuilds represents the version of the A300 in the way that it is actually flying these days, the way that it is actually in use with a lot of cargo operators. And this looks just like what you could imagine to see in a modern days environment. So very, very cool to see that as well. Personally, I'm probably going to get both of them because they kind of serve different markets. The Inibuilds is probably more designed for the modern days simmer who wants to replicate exactly what is happening these days around the globe in the different airliner cockpits, and you are certainly going to get a very true to life feeling A300s in the modern version in this, while the JustFlight version is probably a little bit more aimed towards those of you who are into some of the, let's call it, more traditional way of flying. And I'm sure that you are going to be super excited to what this actually has to offer. But on the other hand side, you have to be a little bit more into all that raw data navigation stuff in order to enjoy the JustFlight to the full extent. And obviously, I do expect the JustFlight to be a little bit more of a learning curve compared to the Inibuilds, which is going to be rather similar in terms of handling characteristics to the A310. So that's the two A300s we see previewed on the FS Expo. It's going to be very exciting to follow along the development of those two, and that's where I'm going to leave you with it. Do let me know which of the two previews you find more fascinating, and do let me know which of the ones you are going to favor over the other. I'm very much looking forward to your comments. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching, and if you liked the video, then do leave a like and comment, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. And now go ahead and watch the two original announcements, which you will find linked in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all again on the next one.